Welcome to The Power Within, the podcast where we explore leadership, personal growth, and the dynamics that shape success. I'm Keith Power, and each week I sit down with inspiring individuals who share insights on leading with impact, building resilience, and unlocking potential. Through their experiences, we'll uncover the mindset and strategies that drive meaningful growth. Whether you're looking to evolve as a leader or gain new perspectives, this podcast is here to guide you. Today's guest on The Power Within is someone whose story is as much about grit as it is about giving. As we explore more stories of resilience, growth, and the power of determination. Nichol Ng grew up in the comfort of a successful family business until 1999, when her father's bankruptcy turned life upside down. At just 21, Nichol juggled multiple part-time jobs to help her family to stay afloat, while quietly carrying the emotional weight of watching everything change overnight. She continued to clear her father's personal debts for nearly 2 decades, right up until 2018, 2 years after his passing. In 2019, the business she ran with her brother was finally taking off, and they invested in a new building to match their growth. But when COVID-19 hit, history threatened to repeat itself. Facing a second financial crisis, Nichol made the heart-wrenching decision to sell her family home in 2022, once again putting everything on the line to keep the business alive. Through it all, Nichol has redefined leadership, running a successful food distribution company, co-founding the Food Bank Singapore, and feeding hundreds of thousands of people while raising 4 children. Her journey is one of resilience, reinvention, and relentless belief in doing what's right, no matter the cost. Nichol, welcome to The Power Within. Let's start with the early years, before the storm hits. What was life like growing up in a family business at its peak? And what did you learn at that time from watching your father lead?
I think the most important thing that I've learned from my dad really early on is when I was 3 years old. We went to pick him up from the shop house. So those were the days where he was still working in the food distribution business, right? They work 7 days a week. Yeah. And, on weekends, the brothers would actually take turns to mend the shop. So I remembered my mom picking him up with me in the car with my brother. There was no helpers back then. So we had a very simple upbringing, I must say. We actually lived in my parents' matrimonial home all the way, till the bank seized it, right? In the early 90s, right? So, but for us I saw that part of my father, working in a humble little shop house. And then later on, he found opportunities. Yeah, so he was really a hunter of sorts, despite very suave, in my mind, my dad was like this gangster style, very stylish, kind of like Marlon Brando kind of thing.
Wow.
And I've looked up to him in that way. He's always, with his cologne and all that, daddy can always do any business, he can close the deal.
Right.
And I've witnessed it myself because my dad has actually brought us for business dinners before at a very tender age, right? So when you sit across the table, you may not fully understand what they're talking about.
But you're absorbing.
Yeah, and deals were, back in those days, really just done across the table, a handshake and things like that. Yeah. So in the 80s, my dad was never around. Early 90s as well, he was extensively building the business. And I saw him move from that Rochor Road shop house to Orchard Road, right? And right smack in town where our head office used to be, with a putting green and a koi pond, and it's like, okay, are we somewhere right now? And the biggest impact that I remember was because he did Hong Kong movies, right? We were producing Hong Kong films. All the stars came to the office for meetings. So all the staff was like, how, taking photos with these glamorous stars. Then I said, what is daddy actually doing? So when I kind of realized that, he built this interesting empire of a mixture of knickknacks of businesses, right? I started to think, how did he do it, right? But I saw him hustle really, really badly, all the time. He was flying in and out. He would fly to the UK, be there for 24 hours and come back. And those days, you had no mobile phones, right? So he would just make that IDD call to my mom. Okay, I've landed, I'm coming back in 2 hours, and things like that. And so my mom was the one that was really just present in my life for all the important events in school, graduations, like prefect investitures and things like that. So I'm actually quite glad that my mom was a housewife, because if she was also a hustler, I don't know how both of us will be.
And yet today, you and your husband running your crazy home when you're hustling,
yes,
you're working.
Correct.
But interesting how you said that your mother was the constant presence, and yet you spoke with great warmth and love then about your dad, and even remembering his cologne.
Yeah.
So how did that feel then, that he was not quite as present perhaps as you'd like him to be?
I think I only felt that I lost out a little bit when I really went back to the family business to work.
Right.
I really appreciated the moments from 2002 to 2016 before he passed, that I had the opportunity to sit down across the table with my dad, like really debating and talking. It's as if we missed out on the puberty years, and I'm making it up, during my early 20s. And the amazing thing is that although he never seems to be around, he's always around for that Sunday team sum, lunch, that he's there. And I believe my mom updates him on certain things, right? But my dad, being my dad, he puts food on the table, and that's how he thinks of it. We were close psychologically.
Okay.
And so, to be fair, my dad always felt that I was the leader in the house, which came with responsibilities. So, my brother and I were just 1 year apart and different, but being a leader is, maybe in the mindset and things like that. So from a very young age, my dad was the one who instilled in me, like, okay, you're the older one, you have to look after, and so he always mentioned that to me. And the other thing is that I think I take after him in certain ways, and I see that.
Would that be this responsibility thing that you feel for other people?
My parents did charity work.
Yeah,
quite
right.
a lot, whether it's Lions Club, or helping in the old folks home, like giving to the school building fund. And then the other thing which was interesting is that as a family, sometimes we would go to the old folks home, on those very special occasions, like my mom would bring us to cut toenails for the elderly.
Oh.
So I had a very rooted childhood. It's nothing glamorous. We got to travel the world. I went to Maldives in 1988, when my dad first opened his duty-free shop. I mean, those were the days that, you don't go to Malay, right? Like, where is this place? But my dad would bring us on all these trips, South Africa, Cape Town. We were there, when they hosted Miss World there, and then we went there because we were hosting Miss Singapore. So it was a very interesting experience. We went to the safari, and my dad was sleeping because he was so tired. Because we traveled so little together, these were the highlights of the trips that, I forever remember in my heart.
So this sounds like it's privileged but grounded.
Yes.
Would that make sense?
Yes.
Which is a bit of a strange mixture. Usually you see privileged as, just get what you want, do what you want. But the privilege was traveling and experiencing and meeting stars, etc.
Yeah.
But the grounding was the family values, the getting together, the traditional values of that, and all that goes with that. So,
and perhaps because I saw how hard my father worked. You kind of know that it doesn't come, easy, right?
Yeah.
There's
it's not
always
free.
There's a give and take. So you kind of like realize from young, I've never like hated my dad or something. Hey, how come you were never around, right?
Yeah.
I think importantly, one event changed, so when the Asian currency crisis really happened. In 96, I remember in year 2 of junior college, my dad told me after my A-levels that he really sat me down with tears in his eyes that I know your A-level results aren't as fabulous as you want them to be, and you can't make it to business school, but Daddy can't finance you to study overseas. You've got to study in Singapore. And I remember him tearing because he kind of felt that his daughter had to sacrifice her dreams, and my brother was already in Australia, boarding school and stuff like that. I had that connection with my father, and I remembered at 17, 16, I told my father, nothing else matters as long as the family's intact. All the 4 of us were united in one, whatever that you decide, we're here to back you up, and that's important.
You saw that impact on your dad, hustling. Health suffers when you travel as much as that, of course, and yet you ended up being as driven, if not more so, than him.
I witnessed my dad put a pacer in his heart, no money to pay SGH, and things like that. Those days, no insurance coverage, right? I'm in the same position. So what can I say? History repeats itself.
You talked about 96 and then onwards to that chat with your dad. So that's, I presume, 1999, the turning point.
Correct.
I hate to mention it, but your father's bankruptcy then forced you into multiple part-time jobs while studying and carrying the financial responsibility for decades after. How did those years shape your resilience and your view of success?
I was grateful enough that I could study in NUS, right? So that was already a privilege for me. And I've been someone who likes to juggle, like a lot of tasks.
I know that.
Yeah. So it was evident since I was in kindergarten, I think, so juggling multiple jobs on weekends or working in cafes, whatever, it doesn't scare me at all. In fact, I loved it so much. And I had the opportunity, right, instead of being ferried around in a Mercedes, right, like I took MRT, right? So it's like public transport or something. I just wanted to do something, and I was so happy when you get your first salaries, and I truly enjoyed it. And over and above the juggling of the work, I was also an active student leader in university, so I was the vice president of the Students' Union when I graduated. People are asking, like, so how do you do it? So I guess that was when I actually developed the lifestyle that I have today.
Right.
Which is like sleep 4 hours, eat once a day,
Crazy.
But I'm always that Energizer bunny, right? That goes hopping around.
But at some point, that stops. And I recognize that. I lived for probably 20 years on 4.5 hours sleep. And if I went past that, I had a headache.
Yes.
And then I retired from corporate life. And it was like falling off a building. Yeah. So you either have to keep going like that until you die, or you have to have another plan. But we'll come back to that later if that's okay. Let's be honest. Many people would have walked away from the family business forever. So what made you decide to step back in and eventually take the helm with your brother?
Again, another tearful episode with my father. I've never seen him so vulnerable. Like, he's always that strong hero, but my dad somehow with me has that, maybe I allow him to break down when he needs to be, right? So in 2002, when I was working in my first job, he said, I really need some help to put computers, right? We don't have computers in the company, so can you come back? And I hate tech, Keith. I really hate tech. I mean, as digital and savvy as I look, right? So I said, sure, I'll come back, and the moment that I said yes to my father, there was no turning back. I know how deep the hole is. I know how complicated the family sometimes can be because there were uncles. But I said yes to my dad, not yes to...
Do you find it hard to say no?
Till today, honestly. Right. I've learned a little bit better, I think, over the last 2 years. Yeah. But I always find it quite tough. Yeah, which means that I don't really place myself first. So sometimes even if I feel uncomfortable. And being a leader, I think saying yes all the time, you are burnt out. Yeah, that's for sure.
And as an executive coach myself, that's the first thing I would be addressing with you, learning how to say no. And to say no in a polite way, but to focus on other things, basically, to focus on what matters to you. 2019, really fast forward now, the business was flying along again. You and your brother invested in a new building, ready for this great growth, only to have the dreaded COVID-19 hit. Yeah. Brings everything to a standstill. When did you realize that this was going to be your full circle moment financially?
So I think we were really on a high in 2019. Yeah, even coming into early parts of 2020, right? Because I was there when SARS hit. So I said, okay, how long can this be, right? Yeah, so we were like, okay, 6 months, 9 months, but then when you get those scary calls from your clients to say that, hey, you know what's going to happen, right? We're going to delay payment by... And then yet we are in this empty building, 250,000 square foot. The emptiness of the space, the hollowness, sets in.
And it crowds in on you.
And this time the difference is when we went through SARS, the team was very small because we just emerged from a bankruptcy, right? So it was really, really tight, like 20 odd people, 30 people. And there I was with 230 employees. A lot of blue-collared workers, that was looking up, to me and 6, 7, family members to look after. The exponential headcount that we were looking after probably was in 400, 500 people, if you times the family. You start to feel the weight on your shoulders, right? And it got really quite scary. I think it was 1.5 years into COVID. When there doesn't seem to be any end.
Yeah,
and the worst thing with technology these days is that you read stories all the time. There's something negative that's emerging cases. They're always counting numbers, and I think it adds more depression on you, right? There was one particular night, and I love to work till very late. I just sat in my office with level 4 balcony, right? I said, should I jump down? And it was a dark moment, right? And I start reflecting, I didn't tell my brother about it. I mean, after that, I told him, I don't know how to solve it. There was no end to this pandemic. I didn't quite know how to solve all these things. And when the bank started tightening up everything, chopping everything off, and then the clientele was not paying, 2.5 years in, I think after COVID, it was really, really stressful, and I felt like ending it all at some point, right?
Very dark time.
And the thing is that I had 4 kids. And that time my youngest was 3 plus 4.
Right.
I had my mom who's staying with me. I said if I had to carry this whole thing, and if I ended it now, everybody else was going to suffer, right?
So even in your darkest moment, your thoughts still went to those that you cared for and you were responsible for.
Yeah, what to do with the food bank, right? So it's and do I want to leave this burden to my brother alone for him to run it? Yeah. So, but I was thinking about that.
Did you seek some help at that time though? Therapy or counseling?
I went to see a psychologist, and because I had an eating disorder since I was 11, right? And I think that also deep roots the way I carried myself in a lot of ways. I drive myself very, very hard. And I've stopped seeing a doctor, since the early 2000s, right? Yeah, because I thought I was out of it. But when crisis hits you sometimes, the old demons just comes back. It kicks in. Yeah. And so that's when I started messaging my best friend. I said, I think I need to see someone, because I'm alone in this. And so...
Before that, you were like Wonder Woman, right?
Yeah.
We're impervious, impregnable.
Correct.
But none of us are. So the fact that you reached out, that's the most positive thing.
Yes.
Of course. For those who are listening and watching, it's always better to reach out than to talk.
Yep. And when I went to see the doctor, they said, okay, I can prescribe you something very light. It's just to help you with your mood so that you can stabilize. And they prescribed me food, right? Because if I don't eat enough... Yeah. It's just logical to everybody, right? If you don't eat enough, your brain cells and everything, your mood starts getting wonky, right? So I had to learn to cope with my own coping mechanisms, but because I've lived with eating disorder for such an extended period of my life, till today, my staff knows that Nichol doesn't eat. So that's the label.
Despite what your logical brain tells you, your psychological responses are very different to that, right? That's the thing. I don't want to get deeply into that,
sure,
but you, in your lucid moments, go, I know I need to eat, I need to do this, and I need to get all of the things to make my brain, my body work. That's your logical sense.
Yeah.
But it's not your logical self that drives all your behaviors, right? It's your subconscious, psychological self.
Yeah.
I hope that you're in a better, stronger place now. The only advice I give to anyone listening is we're never out of it. It's only a question of where you are in your cycle on that.
Right. Yeah.
More power to your elbow. I think that for all of the things you did before, all of the Wonder Woman stuff, your real Wonder Woman moment was that realization that there was a way out. There's always a way out, and it's not the bad way out.
Yeah.
So I'm thankful for that moment. And we actually connected, I'm trying to think, 3.5 years ago. And at the time, I was really interested in doing some pro bono work with Food Bank. And I couldn't see how I would fit so well being the Angmo, the foreigner, etc. But I'm glad that we connected, and I'm glad that we've stayed in touch anyway. You then selling the family home. That's your next step in 2022. You've gone this 2.5 difficult years, see no way out. Now you see, the one way out of this, the financial way out, is to sell the family home, save the company. That's an extraordinary step to take, though. How did you make that decision, and what did it take emotionally to follow that decision through?
It was emotionally a little bit more stressful because now I have my husband and my family with me. It's not mine alone, right? But I think my spouse partner, who's been with me since 97, has gone through the ups and downs with me. And therefore, the moment I said something, then he said, okay, I know it's time, right? Like, so in a heartbeat, said, yeah, sure. I mean, if it's a good deal that we can close, let's just do it, right? As long as the family's intact. It doesn't really matter. And so with his agreement, I sold. But it was a silly move, I would say. I shouldn't have done that because that was what my dad did, right? So it's like he sold his other bungalows and all that to finance the business, right? So now, bitten twice, if on reflection, if anything at all, we have to find ways to look after ourselves first.
Yes.
It's not about whether you want to run away from your responsibilities, but there are certain basics that you really have to put in place. But I did that. I plowed back all the profits into the company, and we're still not quite out of the woods yet, but at least, we showed everybody that, hey, we're putting in effort, right? Like, this is what we did. If you ask me, we're going to do it again, I'm not very sure, but it was a courageous step.
I'd be more blunt. I'd say you should never do that again.
Yeah.
Right? Twice is enough, I think. But while all this is going on, you fighted to save the business. You also grew the food bank Singapore. What kept you committed to giving back, even in the middle of your own personal crisis?
In 2012, me and my crazy brother, who's like, we see each other every day at work, right? And it's as if like, the first question that people ask, are you guys mad or something? Like, siblings going to business was mad enough. And then over and above opening like 4 companies together, and then like, why don't we just start a charity together? Because like we don't get sick of each other. Let's just do something great. I think that shows how close-knitted we really are, and we just felt that Singapore needs something, right?
Yeah.
We're seeing so many of our peers, the supermarkets and everything else, just dumping food away. And this was in 2012. And the cost of food has been escalating, because we see it firsthand, right? We're the guard dogs of whatever comes in, right? So we see the import prices and it scares us. Yeah. And so we say, hey, let's do something. So in 2012, which is really a passion project, a hobby between me and my brother. I always share this little nugget of a story. We wanted to register the name The Food Bank Singapore, and ACRA rejected it. They said that, there's no more banking license in Singapore. So
I see.
Real story, hand to heart, and no shame to, the Singapore Civil Service. But that was how backward we are in 2012.
Right.
In terms of the social settings, they don't really, we've not quite opened up yet, right? And so I gathered information from the UK, Australia, and the US, and this is what Food Bank does. And we pushed it across. Yeah, and so 2 of us were very proud of that. And from little container loads, little pallet loads of close to expired items, we gathered the interest, we gathered the trust of our peers to say that this pair of siblings is off to something. And so we grew bits by bits, but COVID really pushed us like over the ledge.
Yeah.
The sad thing was, nobody really gave us money before COVID. It's like, I only give you all the food that I want to throw away, right?
Yeah.
But nobody really quite thinks that a charity needs...
Yeah, of course, you need operating funds. Yeah.
Yeah, so
For
it's like,
sure.
okay, but we did that. And I'm so glad for Food Bank during COVID time because it kept us mentally sane.
Right.
And to any of the corporates or business leaders out there, if you think that CSR pays off.
Hang on. It kept you mentally sane.
Yeah.
The other thing, it kept tens of thousands of people away from literally starving or failing with their funds, etc. So don't forget that.
Yes.
Please.
Yeah.
You were probably a real lifeline during COVID more than ever for those people. You've done fabulous work, which is why I contacted you. My background, after corporate life, I was chair of a homeless charity. And I came to Singapore with this wild idea that there's no homelessness in Singapore. And that's just not true.
Yes.
Now, I don't want to be negative because I
Yeah.
love Singapore and I think the government over decades has done a fabulous job, but it's not without its problems. It's not. And there are homeless people.
Yeah.
There are people around here who have to gather around charities to get a roof over their head and to
Yes.
eat.
Yeah.
Most people listening to this or watching outside of Singapore would be absolutely aghast because we don't like to share that. It's a bit like, the Chinese where you don't share the family concerns with anybody else.
Exactly.
Singapore's a bit like that.
Yeah.
And it was interesting when you said then about 2012 and the food bank, their misunderstanding of that term. I have a similar experience with a friend, Cassandra Chu, her name is. She was the second person in Singapore to have a guide dog. And I've been to lunch a couple of times with her, and they won't let the guide dog in. Now, in Australia, UK, every other place, it's just normal. So I remember having this conversation. I was probably a little ruder than I should be. We were pushed outside, and then I asked the server, why can't you let the dog in? She had a certificate from the government saying that you should. She said, oh, I don't know, it could defecate or something. I said, I'm sorry, that dog is better trained than you. And I know it was a bit cruel and cutting, but that's how I felt. But I do feel that in the last decade, Singapore has changed.
Yes.
It's moved on.
Yes.
It's opened up.
Yeah.
It's accepting that it's not perfect and
Yeah.
trying to get better.
Yeah.
Let's just leave that there before we get in any trouble, right? So the food bank now reaches over 300,000 people a year.
Yeah.
How does it actually work from collection to distribution, and how do you ensure dignity as well as food for the
Okay.
recipients?
So first and foremost, the food bank is a very small organization. There's about, I think, 11 people, full-time staff right now. We have a larger board right now. I just handed the chairmanship over to a new chairman
I saw.
for governance. As a founder, as a co-founder, my brother and I decided that it was time to professionalize. So, but like all food banks, we're like a pro bono distribution hub or redistribution hub. So you just think of us going around to collect and champion all the excess foods. And then we collect everything, we put them in our warehouse, and the volunteers comes to sort it out in a proper inventory ERP system.
Okay.
And then we actually serve in excess of about 350 different charity organizations. Yeah, and then they would actually like supermarket pick, right? Hey, I need this today, I need that
right.
today. But it doesn't quite stop there, because that is just a very rustic way of what food banking does. So the Food Bank Singapore has always been here to address the gaps in the ecosystem. So for example, in 2018, we commissioned Singapore's Hunger Report, which was released in 2020. So we've become an advocate in this space where we want to use data to drive, the conviction in people that, hey, we really need to address some of these
Yes.
gaps. We're not saying that we are far behind, in doing certain things, we're not good enough. But these are all the facts, collectively, let's do something about it. And so we also launched the first vending machine in 2018 and 2019.
I remember that.
Yeah, and it was a very cool initiative back then, right? So, but now we're kind of like semi-retiring it because the tech is old, it's so expensive, and other people have started following our suit, right? Like say, hey, as long as someone follows it, hey, that means we did something great.
We started something.
Yes.
Yeah.
So all along, the food bank has always been doing interesting, innovative projects that are filling the gap. So we're working on something right now, and I really hope we can bring that to life, which is what we call the feeding directory. So imagine like a Google Maps, right?
Yeah.
But it's all like if you key in your postal code. We already have something quite rustic now on the food bank's website. You key in your postal code, it will tell you the closest feeding location within 1 kilometer.
Wow.
So we are trying to populate the entire Singapore onto this feeding directory, because in time to come, if there was one country that can eradicate hunger,
Yep.
it should be Singapore,
It should.
because we're well connected, accessible, big-hearted people.
And the word hunger, you have to be careful how you use it. We're not talking about people who are suffering from malnutrition in the street, but they're not eating nourishing food because
Yes.
of a poverty. It's really as simple as that. And I come from a very working class background, and people there are often overweight. But the reason they're overweight is that they don't eat nourishing food. They eat the
Correct.
cheapest food,
Yes.
the processed food, the easy to eat food. So hunger, I think, is more about nourishment than
Yes.
hunger per se in Singapore.
Yes.
But there are people who are going to bed hungry at night here.
Yes,
A
there are.
fact.
Yes, and if I may just add on to that, I think it's nourishing the souls as well. And we actually experienced that during COVID time, because we were the only humans that they saw when we were distributing the food bundles, right? So the auntie would like can I talk to you for another 5 more minutes? You know, like my social worker cannot visit me for the next 6 months, right? Like you're the only face that I will see. Yeah, and so then we kind of realized that, hey, we should be bringing laughter, we should be bringing happiness, and we started adding funny stuff to the bundles then.
Right.
We had chocolates. There was one stage we put funny goggles, you know, like this for the kids. Because I told my team, let's just spread happiness, right? It's not just about nourishing your tummies and filling everything, but making everybody feel good.
I would say previously I had zero experience, and just before I joined the homeless charity in Wales, in Cardiff, I went out on what's called the breakfast run. And ostensibly it's to feed people, but really it's connecting with them. You're often the only person they speak to in the day in a nice way.
Yes, correct.
Someone who looks at them, sees them, notices them.
Yeah.
So I think that's as important as the actual feeding part of it, right? You've spoken about the emotional weight of leadership, not just strategy and profit, right? How do you balance being a business leader, social entrepreneur, and a mother of 4, and no help at home? Tell me about that.
I do have some help at home. My mom lives with me. I've got great helpers, right? But I'm a very hands-on mother. So like before I came here this morning, it was school runs, right, all the way. I think it's important to prioritize your hour. So at different hours of the day, you prioritize different things. So like 8:30 onwards, you know, if I could rush home, was really to have that 30 minutes with my kids. So I always have pillow talks with them, like even, you know, and I have to take turns these days because the 4 of them, including the 6-year-old, wants to have pillow talk. You know, yes. So sometimes I need to put a timetable, right? And, you know, sometimes, you know, those that don't get their rounds, you know, they all like get so upset. Yep. That 30 minutes is just so precious, right? Like they will just download every single thing to you. The other thing that's really precious is that 45 minutes that I have with them in the car when I do the morning drive, right? Like they are always having something to update, right? I love that connection because I learn something from them. Yeah. So they inspire me to start my day and end my day on a different note. And I think that's what keeps me sane. That's really very important. And then the other thing is finding purpose. I know it's like a very cliche thing, like finding purpose, right? So, but even at work, just like yesterday, I had this incident with an employee, right? So I always take time to speak to them and connect with them. You know, like one of my staff, I think the grandfather was in critical condition. And this afternoon, I have a very important event, right? So he said, hey, boss, I'm really sorry. I said, please, your grandfather comes first because you're the only caregiver, right? Even as a leader in the company, you need to have those small little connections and conversations. Yeah. It's a knack that I have that if you talk to me for 30 minutes, I would know how much you owe the bank, you know? So it's like, and I appreciate that about myself.
So you're capo in a nice way.
Yes. How many boyfriends you've had, right? Yeah. So, but that allows me to evaluate sometimes someone or, you know, the situation more 360. I enjoy those moments and that's what helps me to balance everything, right? I think importantly is that I love being that capo or that busybody, right? So I'm still on a couple of boards. That keeps me driven. If you ask me one more thing, I have a philosophy. I always clear my inbox at the end of the day. Right. I still have a written piece of paper to-do list, and whatever that I can do today, I finish it today. Whatever that I can do this hour, I complete it this hour. It includes my WhatsApp messages. So if I miss out anybody, I'll always apologize because it's not in my prototype of operations, right? I have to complete it by today. It's stress, right? I can't be like that. Yeah.
I'm going to follow up after this meeting with you. It may well be efficient, but it's definitely not good for your psychological well-being to put yourself under such stress to please everybody. And I have personal experience just this week. I reached out to you, someone who's like stepped away from their role. They're in the food industry. I thought of you and you didn't say, oh, I'm busy. You said, yeah, sure. Always interested. I can catch up. And you took time out to catch up for coffee, energized her, motivated her. Wonderful. Yeah. So I know the type of person you are, but I think sometimes perhaps you need protecting from yourself, Nichol.
Yes.
Having lived through now 2 major financial crises, and I don't mean that the Asian financial crisis, I mean your own, your personal, your family crises. What's your advice to leaders facing make or break moments right now?
I think in the darker moments, always think of yourself being a cocoon in every business, in every career path, right, there are moments that you need to put yourself into that cocoon, right? You're just anticipating the next metamorphosis to come.
Right.
Yeah, so it's not that you are failing, your numbers are dropping, you're not meeting your KPIs, but maybe it's just a moment in time that you need to pull yourself back, rethink your next steps. I used to see everything as a failure, as a downside, how will people view and how will people think, right? In the last 12 months, amazingly, I have found my own voice. I don't know whether it's this female empowerment, like I love Nicole first, but having that self-love actually empowered me to do a lot more. So that's why, like, in the next 12 months or so, like, there's so many exciting projects that I'm going to be embarking on, because I started looking at myself first as a leader, not just of the business, but as a person.
Right.
Yeah, what do I want to do for myself? Because when one chapter closes, another chapter opens. And so I really just have that self-awakening in the last 12 months. And it's empowering. I've never had that in the 46 years of my life, in the earlier parts. But now as I turn 47 this year, I say, hey, let's put myself first. What's in it for me, right? Finally. And I took that with my husband as well. For the first time, I talked back to him. So it's like, and the best thing is that my husband said, hey, I finally can have a decent fight or conversation with you. and so sometimes we never know, right? Because we always say, oh, I need to be that humble person.
Yeah.
But maybe good stuff comes out of it, when you love yourself first.
Yeah, and I'm a firm believer now that you cannot give to anyone else until you've nourished yourself, nourished your heart, nourished your mind, etc.
Yeah.
And I was a little like you, full on, and you think you're doing a fantastic job, right? But you're missing things on the way.
Correct.
And what you're usually missing are the things that matter to you personally. And you are someone who tries to make everyone else happy.
Yeah.
As our relationship progresses, I'm going to nudge you further into the looking after yourself a little more, right?
Yeah.
And I don't like your time management. We definitely need to talk about that.
Okay.
You squash everything in, and the difference is, to most people, you have 20 hours to work, not the usual 16 or 18 that everyone else does, all right? Final thought, Nicole. What's next for you? You've alluded to having lots of things coming ahead. Are you thinking about the next evolution of your legacy?
If I'm going to flip the page to my life, I probably at midpoint now somewhere, we're all going to live to 90, 100, right? With technology and AI cells in our body at some point. I am really thinking of pivoting my paths altogether. So my next chapter will include a lot more in education. It's a big piece of me right now because I worry for the next generation, like what's there for them, and it all starts from how do we actually educate them or bring them up. It's not about the curriculum, but the value system and things like that. So that's one big piece that I want to look at. I still have deep passion for food banking, but instead of just looking at Singapore, we are going to establish the food bank Asia. Yeah, and and just for the food distribution business, the family business, right? So we're thinking of the next 10 years. Where do we want to be when we hit that 100 years milestone, right? If we do get to that point, and I think
when
we will.
When is that going to be, 100 years?
That's 2034.
Oh, it's not so far away.
It's not so far away. It's 9 years down the road.
Yeah.
I told my brother very candidly, let's just do a reflection on what we didn't do as well in the last, couple of years. But let's look forward as well to rebuild.
Yeah.
So we're now at the phase of, we're really like a startup right now. We're rebuilding so many different business pillars and silos. And I guess the most important thing is to know that there's a time and place for everything, and to give up on a project when you know that, hey, that doesn't work anymore.
Yeah.
It's time to walk away. And this includes letting go of the business that my grandfather started.
Right.
In the sense that trading doesn't quite work for us anymore. No. If it doesn't look after you, we need to pivot because the entrepreneurship legacy still exists in us.
But you have to emotionally disconnect to do that, right?
Yes.
That's probably the more challenging part than the decision, is the emotional disconnection you need to make.
Correct.
To pivot
and to say that, no, that those days are gone, let's move to something else. But if you look at all the great family businesses that really have existed for 100, 200 years, right? Everyone has moved on.
Yes,
everyone has evolved, right?
Reinvented themselves, they had to.
Correct. And maybe the next phase will be more successful. And even if it doesn't work out the way that we want, being the hustlers with the heart that we are, we're going to do something about it because we are purposeful people.
Oh, you're definitely a purposeful person. I've not met your brother yet. I need to meet him. I want to see if this is a yin-yang thing or if the two of you are like Energizer bunnies together.
Yeah.
That would be an interesting view. If you were to leave one parting thought for women who are at this point now where the children are growing and they're looking to, hey, what's my legacy going to be? What am I going to focus on me? What advice would you give females in particular facing this point on how to pivot, which is what you're going through right now? So it's very relevant. You don't have all the answers, but what's the direction or the steps that you'd advise someone to take?
I think for women, we always tend to take judgment very personally. Yeah, and I think it's important for us to leave that judgment at the door. So I think for all the females out there, it's important to know that you are the decision maker in your life. So whatever you choose, whether you want to quit your job to be a stay-at-home mom, for example, and take that career break, nobody else has the right to say that whether that was right or wrong.
Of course.
Because all of us will make those decisions for ourselves.
It's not a career break. That's a career direction.
Exactly.
That's the difference. And I think words are important.
Yeah.
If you say career direction, that's your career direction. Your career direction is to be the homemaker. That can these days be the man or the woman.
Yes.
Doesn't matter.
Correct.
But we just had at the last episode, it was episode 1 of the second series, Sohila Kefa, she is an expert in negotiation on salary, etc. But I'd advise you to have a look at that on how women perceive themselves. And this really shocked me from research, that when you made an offer, 57% of men will negotiate, only 7% of women will even negotiate. That's like, wow. And it's back to this judgment thing that you talk about and all of that. So, anyone watching, ladies particularly, don't worry about judgment. Leave that at the door.
Yeah.
The only one who judges you is you, ultimately.
And
Now, to make it fair,
Yeah.
men, what should we do?
I think regardless whether you're a gentleman or a lady, my advice to everybody is why don't you find your own style? I think a lot of times, especially maybe some Asians, right, we fail to stand out in the crowd. I mean, I've got dual colored nails, and stuff like that. A lot of times people say that, wow, she's so loud, there's a perceived notion on how she is. But I think being able to dress up, or the style that you want to be, you carry yourself, right? You find your own voice, and that's important, right? And sometimes it just starts by looking after yourself, grooming, or whatever it may be, in whatever colors, in whatever things. And I think finding your style, it's very important, because that will make you stand out in any interviews or in any business situation. People remember you. And I think that is key, both for men and women.
Brilliant. Be yourself. That's the very best advice you can give. Nichol, it's been wonderful seeing you in this setting. You're the same whether we're sitting in a coffee shop, chatting, or we're in here. Nichol is Nichol. You have your own style. Everyone can see that. I wish you success in the pivot for the business, most importantly for yourself. And the one advice to leave you, get more focused on yourself as you're doing already. Thank you very much for joining us on The Power Within.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to The Power Within. I hope today's episode inspired you to grow, lead, and create the success you deserve. If you enjoyed the podcast, share it with someone who might find it valuable. And don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Join us next time as we explore more stories of leadership and personal growth. And remember that setbacks are just stepping stones to something greater. Until then, stay strong, stay positive, and keep believing in the power within.